Last night game, we talking about practice, man. I mean, how silly is that?
Pulls up three-pointer. Bang! Bang! It's good! Wins the game at the buzzer.
And we're back. Welcome back to the Hoop Junkie Podcast, the #1 sports podcast in the world.
According to us.
I'm your host, Zach. I'm joined as always by the NBA Finals championship man himself, Chance Baker. How you doing, Chance?
Man, I missed you. You come back with your collared shirt looking all ready to go. How have you been, man?
Good, man. Just fresh off of work and went to happy hour, had a couple drinks, and I feel great and libated and ready to talk about this NBA Finals.
Oh, yeah. Ready to bring the energy. I like it. Yeah,
I know.
I was going to join you, but I've got a late night men's league game at 9 p.m. tonight. They got us on the West Coast time slot, so gotta stay sober for at least a couple hours. I've tried to play buzz before. It doesn't work very well. So,
Dude, like, isn't that the worst? Like getting the last slot in the men's league, in the men's league schedule, where you be like, damn, I want the 7:00 time slot.
oh yeah. Yeah, we played at 7 last week and it was perfect. I had plenty of time to get back. Everything was all good. Now it's like I'll get home. It'll be like 10:30. Still have to shower. I feel like I'm getting too old for that. They need to cut it off at 8:00. But it is what it is.
You think about those old school days, like in high school, though. Like you go, getting on the bus and then getting home at midnight and be back in class first thing in the morning. But
yeah, I was gonna say wake up, and back then in high school when you woke up at 6 in the morning, life was crazy back then. I don't know how we did it. Now I'm 6 in the morning. That sounds like insanity.
Or all kinds of. I think about all the nasty shit we used to do in high school, like hooping at lunch, or hooping in the
our
morning.
Basketball would be in second period. Yeah, we'd go play and then we got to go get dressed and go to history. We're just sitting there all sweaty and stuff. Haven't even had lunch yet. It was crazy.
No, just sitting in class, musty, smelling like Axe.
Yeah. Yeah, it was wild times. It would go to lunch and would have a cheeseburger with some milk in a carton. It was a different world.
Oh, good old American lunch, brother.
Yeah.
You got to have that dairy in. You know why? Because of capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion that we need a side pod for.
Yeah. We got all off season coming up to do all those crazy pods.
Yeah, and I hope we cover it all.
Yeah, man. But look, Chance, since we last got together, I don't even know last week we didn't even do any eulogies, but I think there's a couple teams that we missed out on.
Yeah. There's so many deaths that we skipped a few, but there are a couple big teams that I think we've got to pay our respects for the big ones at least. The Los Angeles Lakers began their season October 18th, 2022, and were eliminated from playoff contention on May 22nd, 2023, much later than people expected. It was a very up and down season for the Lakers. They started 2-10 and looked to be one of the worst teams in the league. But after making promising moves at the deadline, they secured 7th in the West before making a deep playoff run all the way to the conference finals. And although they fell short, the Lakers should be proud of how the season unfolded, especially considering how it started. Now comes an interesting offseason where the Lakers have some decisions to make, starting with Austin Reeves, the White Kobe, who is expecting a huge contract this summer. They also have the looming LeBron retirement situation, if anyone actually believes that LeBron might be retiring. But he did hint at it during the Lakers post-game. But could this have been a hint that the Lakers just need to go even bigger with acquisitions this summer? What are your thoughts on how the Lakers season ended, Zach? And is the LeBron retirement real or fake?
First off, stop it, LeBron. We know you're not retiring. So
he just needed some attention to him, man. The eulogy from the Hoop Junkies pod is not enough attention. He just needs a little more spotlight with how they ended.
Clearly, LeBron ended that season in a game 4, and he balled out. I mean, he had a great game 4, and honestly, I mean, he had a great playoff run on for a man that is almost 1 foot out the door. He had a great playoff run, but we know
Literally
LeBron's
playing
got
on 1 foot too, apparently.
But
So
seriously, 1 foot, but he's got $100 million left on that deal. LeBron is, first off, LeBron's not gonna, we know, it's well documented how cheap LeBron James is. And then also, LeBron is not going to miss the opportunity for a retirement tour. We all know he wants this retirement tour. He wants to go around and kiss babies and wave. That is that type of guy. He's not going to go out like Duncan or Dirk and just, hey, by the way, I'm out. No, he wants the attention. But look, the Lakers, shout out to the LA Lakers and Rob Pelinka. I mean, I don't know if I give you a congrats, Rob Pelinka, or just good job, buddy. You saved your ass.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where like you did great, but like you also put yourself in this situation. So like, how much credit do you get? I mean, he did what he had to do.
He did what he had to do, but he did it. So look, things are looking good. I mean, if they can, like all reports are indicating they're going to re-sign Reeves, and then they got a high priority on signing Rui.
As they should after how he played.
Yeah. D'Lo, if he comes back, he's coming back on a smaller deal. If you can keep this core together and then maybe make some tweaks or whatever, I think they got a chance to be competitive again after a full offseason. Now, it is rumors out there. Can they go out and get a Kyrie Irving? That'll remain to be seen. Now, and I want to stop this. I want to start this conversation here on this pod. Lakers fans, hey, stop blowing me up in my messages about Kyrie coming to LA on a sign and trade. That is not happening unless Vanderbilt, Rui, and Reeves or whatever is coming back. Dallas is going to go for the cap space. They do not want D'Angelo Russell for Kyrie Irving. It makes 0 sense. 0.
Hey, Lakers fans have some interesting minds.
Yeah, I'm like, why would the Mavs do that? It makes 0 sense. However, look, the Lakers have a solid team, man. Run it back next year, make some tweaks around the edges, man. I think they got a shot.
Moving on. The Boston Celtics began their season on October 18th, 2022, and were eliminated from playoff contention just recently on May 29th, 2023. The Celtics were favored out of the East for most of the year, but ultimately fell short when it mattered most for the second season in a row. And after nearly being the first team in NBA history to come back from a 3-0 deficit, the Celtics completely melted down in a Game 7 matchup against the most likely mentally tougher Miami Heat. So now the Celtics have questions of their own this summer. Do they sign Jaylen Brown to a $300 million max deal? If they do they keep him or do they trade him somewhere else? Do they keep Joe Mazzulla after an up and down and mostly inconsistent playoff showing? Look, as long as they're led by Jason Tatum, the Celtics will be potential contenders, but at what point do they make a bigger splash after multiple years of being so close, but not winning the title? What's next for Boston, Zach?
Man, look, hey, Boston, look, at the end of the day, they've got a great core of a roster. This team went to the NBA Finals last year, made it back to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they were 1 game short of making it back to the Eastern Conference Finals. But what did we say on this pod? Their coaching has been questionable. Does Mazzulla, after 1 full year as a head coach, is he able to correct some of his wrongs? Maybe. Who knows? But I do think Boston has to give him a chance, because what they did last year on not giving Udoka a chance and cutting him off way earlier than they should have. And you saw reports coming out today that like at least 3 coaches from the Celtics staff are going to Houston probably to be on Udoka's staff. So something's, like I've been saying the whole time since it happened, Chance, something doesn't check out right here. But for whatever reason, they made that decision. But the big decision this offseason is coming with Jaylen Brown. You can't have a roster of two of the same players taking up $600 million over the next, 5 years. That's a tough pill to swallow for anybody. So going into this offseason, they got to find a solution for that. Does that work, or do you move on from Jaylen Brown? The deal, we know the deal's getting signed because Jaylen Brown has no reason not to sign that deal because it's a supermax. And then the Celtics don't want to let him walk for nothing. So the deal's getting signed. Sure. But at what point do they decide, hey, halfway in the season we're going to move on? Are we going to do a sign and trade up front? I don't know. But all that remains to be seen.
I agree with all of that. I think it's a no-brainer. The contract's getting signed because you can't give up the asset, right? You have to have it. And there's plenty of suitors for Jaylen Brown with a $300 million contract. I mean, he's not a superstar. I don't think he's a first option on a championship level team, but he's a great second option. He's a top 20 to 25 player in the league. And a lot of teams would love to have him. But ultimately, as you mentioned, when you're building around two wings, I think you make a decision. If you're going to go in all in on that, I think you need a better lead guard. Jaylen Brown just is not a guy that can create. If he dribbles the ball more than 2 times, it's going back the other way in the layup. Like, he's got to work on his handles this offseason. 8 turnovers in a crucial game is just not going to cut it. So I think there is a world where they could still coexist. I would definitely try to make it work one more year with Brown and Tatum. It's just really hard to build around, to get 2 superstars like that. But with the new CBA, having 2 guys making that much money is just going to make it that much harder to build a good team around them. So when these new CBA rules start to kick in, that's another layer you have to think about. So it's going to be really interesting for some of these large market teams to see how they navigate through these new changes, because it kicks in next year. They didn't have like a grace period or anything. They're like, okay, this is going next year. So it'll be a lot of decision making to do for teams like Boston. And I'm curious to see what direction they go.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about them all summer long.
No doubt, both of those teams.
Chance, in lighter news, since we're off of eulogies, a couple of guys got some jobs. All right, a couple of guys got some jobs. Nick Nurse is going
job creation going on in this economy. It's just great to see all these guys, even though like 10 of them just lost their job a week ago.
Right. Thanks, Obama. No, but listen. Nick Nurse is going to Philadelphia, and Adrian Griffin is going to the Milwaukee Bucks. Chance, at first glance, how are you feeling about both of these hires?
So the Griffin one was interesting because when that news broke, I think Shams had tweeted that, first he said Nick Nurse took himself out of the running, and now they're deciding between Griffin and it was one other guy. Do you remember who it was they were deciding between? I can't remember at the moment, but he tweeted that, and then like 5 minutes later, like literally 5 minutes later, they're like, all right, Adrian Griffin is, signed to be the next coach of the Bucks. And so it's like, well, that was really interesting. Like, did Nurse like pull out? Like, why did Nurse remove himself, or did Nurse just find out he wasn't getting that job? Or maybe he was, now we know, already in discussions with Philly. So the first thing that jumped out to me on that side was it was just kind of interesting how it all was reported and how it all went down.
Well, as far as the coaching situation, it's some intel on that. So all of them, their final interview apparently was with Giannis. Giannis did one-on-one interviews with all of the coaches, and then apparently Giannis handpicked Griffin. So I think probably at one of those points, like, Nurse probably knew what the deal was, and, and was just like, hey. And then also Daryl Morey is the guy that he is. Daryl Morey is probably like, look, we're going to make this happen, And so I think all of that was probably a perfect storm. And then and that's how all that happened. But anyways.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. And that's the world we live in now, where the superstar gets to conduct the final interview and have that one-on-one. And I'm not going to act like I know a ton about, Griffin's coaching style just yet. Obviously we have the previous controversies that came up on social media with the ex-wife or whatever, but none of that was proven. And so it sounds like, none of that was worth, for the Bucks to not consider, strongly consider moving forward with him. So I do think that sounds like kind of held him back. He could have potentially gotten a job sooner. So if Giannis is on board, I think the biggest thing is going to be finding a half-court offense for the Bucks. We saw them really slow down when it came down to the playoff setting, going in half-court against a team like Miami who can really rough it up and get physical. Obviously, a team with Drew Holiday, Giannis, and Brook Lopez is going to defend and going to hold teams. You don't even really have to have a great defensive philosophy to keep teams under 110 with that that lineup, but can he be creative to get Giannis going in the half court and, really improve their half court offense? That's the number one thing that I'm looking forward to on the Bucks side. Any other thoughts there?
Which chance? Well, first off, I didn't know anything about the scandal of Adrian Griffin. This is my first time.
It's something with his. Yeah, something. It was like 2020. His ex-wife basically accused him online of some kind of sexual misconduct, and it was never proven or anything. But it raised a lot of red flags, and there's talk that potentially prevented him from getting jobs a couple years ago. And so it's been a while, and as I mentioned, nothing's been proven. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know one way or another what happened, but it is out there, and so that's just something that obviously had to be considered throughout the process.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but Adrian Griffin as a coach, I mean, I'm familiar with them as a stint as a Mav player. He was on that team in '06 that had that tragic loss in the finals. He was always a tough-nosed defensive player, and then apparently his coaching style is the same way. So I think that's probably why Giannis identified with him, because one, he's a player's coach. Then also, I mean, defense is his bread and butter, and it does match this team's roster. However, like you said, the one question I have is a defensive minded coach really the answer for this particular roster? Because this roster has shown, especially with Chris Middleton not performing to the level of what he was prior to his injuries, they have struggled with shot creation. Because Giannis is just not that type of player that you can give him the ball and just say, hey, go to work like Shaq did on the post. Giannis is more so driving to the rim, bully ball into the bucket, which is still highly efficient.
Yeah, for sure.
but there's a lot of things that they've got to do, because Drew Holiday is a great point guard, but he's not necessarily your true traditional get everybody involved point guard. They still got a great roster that can still win multiple NBA titles if they're able to bring everybody back, and if health is at 100% of what it was in the past. But yeah, that's just my question. But I think a lot of that can be fixed with the staff. With all these coaches, you can have a defensive minded coach, but who does he bring in? I would like to see him bring in a experienced assistant coach that has been maybe been a head coach at some point in time. That is more of an offensive minded coach. So that way they can pull some stuff. Maybe D'Antoni wants to come out the woodworks, or somebody like that. That's on their last ride and wants to get a NBA championship. So I think it's cool seeing guys get first time shots at coaches. Yeah. So I have nothing bad
to say.
Especially
people that come from that coaching tree, it's a long history of success from that that whole coaching tree that's been out there. We've seen it with Taylor Jenkins here in Memphis. His first head coaching job, I think most would argue there's some crazy Grizz fans out there that think he should be fired already, but for the most part, everybody would agree that he's done a good job. I think I'm optimistic about how Griffin will look. I'm with you. I'm curious to see what moves they make on the offensive side, because that's the biggest room for improvement for the Bucks team.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other boy.
So Nick Nurse to Philly. I really like that. I thought Nick Nurse was arguably the best coach on the market. I think, he's a proven winner. I think he's one of the best as far as just in-game execution, having guys ready. And honestly, I think that's something Philly needs. I think with Doc Rivers, his teams tend to just be undisciplined at times, especially when it matters most. You get into these playoff games and you're in elimination games, and it's very consistent. It doesn't matter what team, if it's Boston, LA, Philly, just his teams always have folded in big moments. And I think eventually that becomes a pattern. And I do think Doc can be, underrated at times, but I think this is a change that was needed. And I do think Nick Nurse can solve some of that as far as just more consistency, having guys do the right things. Curious to see what the roster looks like if Harden is back. Can he, make some tweaks on the offense around the Harden Embiid pick and roll game, finding other ways to get Embiid in space and get him going. But definitely think it's a great move. It's a move I would have made if I was Milwaukee or Philly. Nick Nurse would have been my guy. I think he's a proven winner and he can make those adjustments. So really excited to see that. Just curious to see how the roster shakes out around him. Clearly they're, going to continue to be win now mode as long as Embiid's on the team, because even though he's not super old. His, with his body type and age, his days are limited, and so it's time to go out and win now. So curious to see
Yeah.
what moves they make around him. But I like the hire for sure on the Philly side.
Yeah, but and I do think Nurse will open up their offense a little bit. Doc, I mean, it's been proven over time that Doc's couple things that he does is that he gets a little stale with players, and then also his adjustments have been very highly questionable. One thing about Nick Nurse is that those are usually areas in which he excels in as a coach. The only concern I have is Nick Nurse going to understand that he doesn't need to be playing Joel Embiid 40 minutes a night
Yeah, that's not going to
throughout the
work.
regular season.
Yeah.
That's not going to work for him. It's been
Mm-hmm.
proven time and time again that Joel Embiid is a player that, I mean, he needs to be managed because you want him to be his best self in the playoffs. And unfortunately, more times than not, we just haven't seen that out of Embiid due to all kinds of different health issues. And then the second thing is, I'm not sure James Harden is coming back to Philly.
I'm not either. Yeah, I'm not either.
Everything I'm seeing right now, they are already pegging Fred VanVleet as the second option if Harden doesn't return. What does that tell me? That tells me that they know something we don't know. Why is that report already coming out? Because, like, for instance, you look in a case like in Dallas, right, with Kyrie, right? We know that he is very mercurial. We know that he could decide that he wants to go play for the Beijing Ducks because he doesn't agree with U.S. politics or whatever the case may be, right? Like, but you're not hearing any stories leaking out about already having a replacement plan in line. And so usually whenever you're hearing stories like that leaking out is because there is a high probability that James Harden is already out the door. And I'm not sure if at this point in James's career, I mean, this decision is really going to tell us a lot about where James Harden is in his career. Because the only real option for him is Houston, is what's been laid out there, is or unless he wants to take a pay cut and go to LA and play guard for them, because he's an LA guy and he's got ties with Bron and Davis. But if we're hearing this stuff, a lot of times, Chance, in this case, where there's smoke, there's fire. And so I think there's a real possibility that he leaves. I hope that he stays because I think him and Embiid under Nurse could really thrive under that circumstance. But I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, this will be the telling tale of who James Harden is. I think there's a very real chance that James Harden just wants to go to Houston. He doesn't want to be the guy that's on a playoff team. He just wants to go play with a young team and just go get buckets and have no pressure, go to his strip clubs. I'm sure he's on a first name basis with all the security guards still. He could get right in and, do his thing.
Well,
and that might just be
his jersey's already retired out there in Houston.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is.
Not in the Toyota Center, but it's in the strip club.
Oh yeah, and that might just be who James Harden is. He might just be a guy that wants to go make his money and go play casually and no pressure, no playoff pressure. I'm starting to think Harden might actually just prefer that, and if that's what he wants to do, go for it. That's the legacy he'll leave behind. But yeah, it'll be an interesting offseason to see if that's the route he goes, and if so, what is the backup plan? Van Fleet could be a great option. He was a little inefficient the past season, but obviously he has the ties with Nick Nurse, so that could make a lot of sense. So yeah, going to be an interesting offseason that I'm sure we'll discuss a lot more deeply throughout the summer for them as well.
Now, Chance, we are finally here.
We made it.
Tomorrow night, we've got, or whenever we post this pod, it might be today, it might be tomorrow. I don't know. Whenever it gets posted, but later
Thursday
on,
night, it's happening.
Yeah. Thursday night, we've got a matchup between the heavyweight Nuggets and the underdog Miami Heat. How are you feeling about this series going into it?
I'm honestly really excited for this matchup. I think obviously from a rating standpoint, the casual fan, like everybody wanted like a Lakers Celtics matchup, or I
Mm-hmm.
had Nuggets Sixers for the big man matchup. Like, from the story arc perspective, from an outside point of view, like a lot of people might have had different matchups, but I think, what's not to like? You've got this 8 seeded team who just made a Cinderella run. It's, almost like March Madness when that 12 seed just makes a huge run. And then it's like, how do you not root for them? You've got the Jimmy Butler saying last year, we're going to be back. We're going to, get it done this time. And then he just absolutely comes through and delivers and carries the Heat. I won't say carry it because they had a lot of guys step up, and we'll get into that too. But just, finds a way for the
Mm-hmm.
Heat to, as an 8 seed, to make their way all the way back to the finals. That's a great storyline. But then on the other end, you've got the Nuggets. Jokic is starting to make an argument for one of the best offensive players like of all time. Like, he has just been absolutely unbelievable. And you see what happens now that they're fully healthy. They've got Jamal Murray, and that is just one of the best 1-2 man combinations that I've seen in recent years as well. And the
Mm-hmm.
Nuggets just absolutely look unstoppable. The Lakers, they were a tough matchup for the Warriors and the Grizzlies, and the Nuggets, a lot of the games were close, but at the end of the day, the Nuggets were just such a better team, and they can just pull so many different strings on offense. One of the things I'm looking at is, Jokic versus the Miami zone, how often they're pulling that. There's so much that I want to get into from the analytics side of things, but yeah, I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a great matchup. I think, on paper, most people would want to say Nuggets take it pretty easily. They're the heavy favorite, deservedly so, I think, but Miami has done this time and time again, 3 times in a row now, where they were the plus 400, plus 500 underdog. And me and you said, we actually called them right against Boston. But at that point, we've seen it happen before. Now we've seen it happen twice. The Knicks series was kind of a toss up, but going to Milwaukee, going to Boston and handling those, why not do it one more time? So I'm not going to sit here and say the Nuggets have it in the bag, because this is going to be a hard fought series. And honestly, I can't wait.
Yeah, man, you got 2 different types of teams, man. Like the Nuggets run their offense heavily through Joker. Everything comes from him dishing the ball from the perimeter, which is crazy when you talk about a duo. I love the Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic duo, because as a duo, man, like I'm not saying traditional, but you've got a big and you've got a guard. Like, and if you look at most championship teams, they've got a go-to guard and they got a go-to big. That's like the basis of my championship team, right? But the cool thing is that they both dominate the game in unlikely ways than what you would expect
It's almost
from them
an
out of their
inverse
position.
Yeah.
It's an inverse. Jamal Murray on the post and in the low block, outside of Jalen Brunson, I don't know if there's a better guard that has great post play and feels comfortable. And Luka Doncic is really good, but is he a guard? I mean, whatever.
Right.
But you know what I mean?
Or as
But
like the 6'3" type of point guard body that can just get down in the post and execute the way he does.
It is amazing. But then you see Jokic, he's able to catch the ball, and especially now with him being in this great shape he's in now, he catches the ball, runs the break, passes and sets up that whole offense. It's a beautiful thing from a basketball standpoint. And honestly, Chance, anybody who does not like this matchup is a damn casual. You are a casual fan if you aren't excited for this matchup. Now, do I think it's a little lopsided? Yeah, a little lopsided. But you have 2 different types of play styles. I just talked about the Nuggets. Now, if you talk about the Heat, this team is everywhere. What was that show that won that movie that won all those Oscars? Everywhere, all the time, all at once, or whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Whatever that show is, that is the doggone Miami Heat, because you know what? They are everywhere, all the time, all at once. I don't even know what the doggone movie is, but you know what I'm talking about. That's the feeling you get. Jimmy Butler won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Should he have? I don't know. Caleb Martin balled his ass off, and you know what? It wasn't just Caleb Martin that series. They got doses from Gabe Vincent. Bam stepped up defensively in times that you needed him. They got contributions from Duncan Robinson. Coach Spo.
Big series.
Beautifully took advantage of Missoula through that whole series. Missoula had arguably, if we went into the season, Boston, if you were to rank teams going into this season in the power rankings, You were not ranking Boston anywhere past 5. Most people weren't ranking them anywhere past 3 going into the season. So that shows you this Miami Heat team that really has no mega stars outside of maybe Jimmy Butler, but outside of that, it's a whole bunch of undrafted guys. I know they get sick of hearing that, but that is what the expectation was for all of these guys for to be nothing. But they play a great team game. And so so I think you've got two contrasts of styles going head to head against each other, man. And I think it's something that I'm really excited to see. Now, going into this series, Chance, you know what my expectations are? Nuggets in 5.
Nuggets in 5. Yeah,
I got the Nuggets in 5.
I think that's a safe bet for me. I think I'll go Nuggets in 6 because I just think Miami, they have the experience, and I mean, they've pulled so many surprises so far. Like, I literally think anything could happen in this series with the way Miami has played. So I think they can get a couple. I think, none of them are afraid of the moment. Obviously, Jimmy Butler's not afraid of the moment. He's been there before. But for them to go in and take that, I mean, we haven't even discussed how game 6 ended of this series, but, Jimmy Butler, first off, Jimmy Butler to be a guy down by 2, go in there with 3 seconds left, season on the line, trying to put away the Celtics, and to just calmly nail all 3 of those, that gets lost in the moment because of what happened after. But that was a huge moment that not many people, I've seen a lot of guys, superstar type players, that are not able to fulfill that moment of everybody, 20,000 people in the stands watching you, whole team's relying on you, and you just calmly knock all 3 down.
At home.
Million people at home, everybody tuning into Stream East. They're going to see what happens 90 seconds later. And he just goes in and just knocks all 3 of them down. And that was incredible. And then
it was.
It was. And so obviously, but then Derek White going back with the tip in, for them to be able to go through that moment. And then honestly, I knew Miami was going to win.
Derek White reached all the way past his hairline to tip that doggone ball in there, boy.
He did. That was absolutely insane. But then when you see in the post-game press conference and you see Spo, he's like, "Hey man, look, I don't know how, but we're going to go get it done. Like, I wish we could line them back up and play right now." Most coaches in that moment, they're like, it's, just hate it for the guys. They work so hard, and the game ended like that. Now, but it's on to game 7. Like, Spo was not having that. He was like, "Hey, wish it would have gone our way, but I wish we could line them up, play right now. We're ready to get after it. We're going to go back and we're going to take care of business." And Jimmy Butler, same thing. He's like, "Hey, look, I didn't play my best. If I play a good game, like, we're not even in that position, I'm ready for game 7. We'll go get it done then." And to go through that, and they're just not even faltering. They just come out. They completely took. I mean, I think the Celtics jumped up like 9-4, but then from there, it's like all Miami for the rest of the game. And not many teams have the mental toughness to recover from that moment, to have to go to Boston, first team to have a game 7 coming back from 3-0 where it's actually in Boston. There's a lot of pressure on Miami at that point. They don't want to be the laughing stock, the team, even though they were the heavy underdogs going into the series. You don't want to be the first team to blow a 3-0 lead. You don't want to be heartbroken 2 years in a row in the conference championship in a game 7. It took so much mental toughness for them to go in and not even win the game, but just to completely own the game the whole way. And yes, Jason Tatum was hobbled, but I think Miami was winning that game regardless with the way that game ultimately turned out. So for them to be able to do that, I do think there's a world where they bring that same mentality and that same toughness. I do think Spo versus Malone is a lot closer of a coaching matchup than Spo versus Mazzulla was. Obviously, Malone's more experienced. The Nuggets are just a better, all-around team. I think at this point, as good as Boston is, the Nuggets are just on a different level. And yes, I think on paper, the Nuggets should win. I think the most likely outcomes are Nuggets in 5 or Nuggets in 6. But I do think there's a world where Miami just does what they've been doing, and we're here saying they're up 2-0. They went to Denver and won 2 in a row. At that point, Denver would probably still be the favorites for the series. But at some point, I just have to acknowledge, like, Miami is capable of anything, and this could be one of those teams that they make a documentary about one day. And they're that 8 seed that just kept shocking the world, and that's what makes the series so exciting to me.
Man, and how much I hate to admit this, because I think all NBA fans who are NBA fans that don't reside in Miami or Southern Florida freaking hate hearing heat culture. Mm-hmm. But you know what? Pat Riley got that organization right. Like, they all exude confidence. Like even when they down, like they are always about it and always locked in. And so if there is a team to pull off some incredible underdog story, it's don't get me wrong,
It's them.
it's this Miami Heat
Hmm.
team. This
Oh
Miami
yeah.
Heat team has proven time and time again, not even just this iteration of this Heat team, just every year when we get down to the playoffs, they always find a way to be in the mix.
Yep.
And so, but going into this chance, I just don't know if they're going to be able to overcome all of the talent that is on this Nuggets roster. Because Bam is going to give everything he's got to Joker. And I have no
Hmm.
doubt in that. But unfortunately, if you look at all the matchups between Bam and Joker, Joker has found a way to take advantage of Bam in these scenarios. So what changes? Does Spoelstra come up with new schemes and things like that to off get them off balance a little bit? I don't know. That remains to be seen. But I know there's a couple of facts here that I do not want to ignore, Chance. They are playing games 1 and 2 in Denver.
Yep.
Altitude is a real thing in Denver. You hear about athletes
Oh
talk
yeah.
about this all the time, how they hate playing in Denver. They're playing in Denver after coming off of a game 7 where they
Hmm.
only had at this point, 2 days rest? 2 full days rest?
2 full days. Yep.
Yeah, 2 full days rest, and then had to travel in between from East Coast all the way to the West Coast. Dude, I would not be surprised if Miami gets hit in the mouth in game 1. I wouldn't be surprised just because honestly, I mean, but that mental toughness might kick in and they and they might have it. But
It might,
dude,
to your point,
th-
and I think that's where Miami really hurt themselves by letting this series get extended, because there was talk of, them sweeping Boston. This series,
mhm.
there was a time when we thought there might not be any basketball for 10 days. And if that were the case, I could see Spoelstra doing something like, bringing the team out a week earlier, getting them used to the environment, practicing in Denver for 3 or 4 days. And he could have had
Mhm.
them really ready and acclimated for this, and it would have been a different discussion. But because that series drug on, all of a sudden now it goes to 7 and they only have a couple days rest. That is going to be a major factor that I think they'll start to feel
Yeah.
some of the ramifications of letting that series get extended, because they could have been more prepared for this. They could have got out to Denver earlier, but they end up getting pushed to 7. So now they have that short turnaround. And I think that is very real. And that's a possibility.
But one thing though, Chance, it's a counter to my own point. If there is a team that's the most conditioned team, it's the
It's
Miami
Miami.
Heat. You hear
Yep.
about in the offseason, like their bigs have to be below 10% body fat. The wings got to be below 6%. Guards are like below 4% body fat. Because that's that's Heat culture. That's what they do.
Yep.
In any other team, that would be problematic, and players would probably be complaining to the union. But in Miami, that's how
Yep.
they do things. And so if there is anybody that's a prime case study for this whole rest versus playing and all that
Rust.
stuff. Yeah, rest versus rust. It is the doggone Miami Heat, just because they
Mhm.
are probably the best conditioned team. I mean, not probably. They are the best conditioned team in the whole entire association.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great point for sure. Anything else that you had? Anything on Tyler Hero? It sounds like he might be back for game 3. Do you think that makes a difference or moves the needle? Obviously, they found their rhythm without him. I think it actually benefited on the defensive end, not having
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Hero. But in a series against Denver where you got to have some more guys that can go out and get buckets, and that's really where they struggled against Boston, is
Mm-hmm.
that they're running out of options. I think Caleb Martin, the way he's playing, that opens things up even more as well. But it sounds like Tyler
Mm-hmm.
Hero could be back midway through the series. Do you think that swings things in Miami's favor? Or do you think
I
it
like
comes to a
it.
situation where it throws them off?
Yeah, well, I think Spo's not stupid, so I think Spo is going to use him in a smart way. I think he's going to use Tyler Hero coming off the bench in either like a sixth, seventh
Hmm.
man role, type of thing, where just come in and just give me instant offense. Come in
I think
that
so too.
Jamal Crawford, J.R. Smith type of role, no expectations. But when Jimmy goes to the bench, I just need somebody else to run my offense through a little bit more to to get buckets. I don't expect him to go from all this time off to playing 30 minutes a night. I think, but if he can come in and give me a solid 15, I think we're in a good spot, and I think that's probably what Spo will utilize him in when he comes back. But
Yeah, I think
Tyler
that's the
Hero,
way to go.
he
It's
can
the low
shoot the
risk.
ball. Yeah, it's low risk. He can shoot the ball, and what you need against a high scoring offense like the Nuggets, you got to put points in the basket because it's only so much stopping you're going to do against the 2-time MVP.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. I think you bring him off the bench. If it goes well, he's a spark plug. You can leave him in longer, but the last thing you want is for him to come in and throw off the rhythm of the entire team. So I think that's a good low risk way to play it. And it also might depend on how the series goes. If Miami goes in and gets one or even both in Denver, at that point it's like, hey, you wait up. I'll call you when I need you. We might just give you a ring and put that on your broken hand. But at this point, it depends on how these first two games go at this point, and we'll see how it goes from there. So curious to see how Spo plays that. Sounds like he definitely will be ready at some point. And then after that, biggest story for me is the Bam Jokic matchup. Do they put Bam on Jokic, straight up? A lot of teams have tried the approach of putting their big off of Jokic and having them play help. I think Bam would be better in that situation, but the problem with Miami is they have no other size really outside of Bam. And you saw that in the Celtics series where when Bam is off the court, they don't trust Zeller to play any minutes at all anymore. And so then at that point, they're just running 5, wings out there. So if you're going to take Bam off of Joker, even within that starting lineup, then it's either Butler or Strus, guarding Jokic straight up. I don't know if that's the matchup that they want. The Heat just don't have much size. And as hard as they played, that's where I lean towards Denver because they just have way more size on that side. Maybe they go with some type of matchup zone, or Spo could get creative with some type of, boxing one on the big man. Spo will have some creativity and find some ways to throw different looks at them and try to confuse them.
Yeah, Chance, I 100% expect different looks. There's no way Spo is I promise you, they probably hadn't practiced their offense too much. What they've probably been practicing is their different defensive sets. They're going to have to go through. I expect to see some old school 2-3. I expect to see some matchup zone. I expect to see boxing one. I expect to see everything thrown at this team because nobody on that roster is capable of holding Nikola Jokic one-on-one. And honestly, what people are forgetting, and then if they focus on Jokic too much, Aaron Gordon coming off that weak side is a matchup for them as well, because Aaron Gordon is probably bigger than almost everybody in the Miami rotation, maybe minus Bam, because they're probably about the same size. And so, so they've got to be careful with what they do, because you don't want to just be leaving Aaron Gordon with free line of sight to the rim. So, so yeah, they're going to have to get creative, and I expect them to throw everything at Joker and just see what sticks, and then just roll with it. Because it's definitely it's not going to be this isn't no traditional, hey, we're just going to put him on him and him on him and get through this whole finals. Nope. This is really going to show how good of a coach Spoelstra is.
Oh, yeah. And, we've seen the Miami Heat are one of the best teams at implementing junk defenses, zone defenses, and making it effective. But on the other end, Denver was one of the best teams in the league at operating against the zone. Obviously, you don't see it a ton in the regular season, but when they did, they were very efficient against that. And, I mean, when you have a 7-footer who can play make like Magic Johnson out there, like, you're going to be good against a zone. And so just getting him in the middle, it'll be really hard even for a zone to work just because of Jokic's playmaking. So I think a lot of the strengths Miami brings, I think, are all offset by Jokic. But at the end of the day, Spo's going to have additional tricks up his sleeve, like you mentioned, where he could throw, additional wrinkles at them that they've never even seen before. And like you said, I guarantee every minute of practice is going over different coverages and rotations and how they're going to guard. And it'll be a chess match. And I'm really curious to see how it goes down. I think it's like you mentioned, if you're not excited about this, you're a casual, because overall it's a great matchup. And there's a lot of different ways to look at this and a lot of different ways to go on the outlook of this series.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped. I'm looking forward to it. We got it coming on live Thursday night. What time? 7:00? What time is the game set?
I think 7:30. I believe
7:30 Central.
Double check it for me. Yep, 7:30 Central. Nuggets 8.5 point favorites off the gate. That's a pretty high spread for game one of a finals. That's how you know what the general public thinks about the series. So curious to see how this first one goes.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup, man. But look, we'll see. So I got the Nuggets in 5, and you got them in 6, right?
I'm going Nuggets in 6. Yeah, that's a final prediction. But I don't even feel good about it. I should, because it's a safe bet. One of our 2 picks is the safe bet, but anything can happen. I just want to see a good long series at this point. Give me some more entertainment.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, I wouldn't even be mad about a 7-game series again, just because when this goes off, we don't have any more basketball.
Yep.
So
let's enjoy it while we can. We've got at the max 7 games left, so let's soak it up.
Sure thing. Well, all right, Chance. I think that about wraps it up, man. Let's get on out of here.
Wraps it up.
All right. Until next time, we'll holler at you. Peace.